Welcome to CosmoFactory, a podcast by Cosmoprof Worldwide Bologna, where we explore the entire cosmetics, personal care, and fragrance industry supply chain. I'm your host, Deanna Utrusky, and here at CosmoFactory, we look beyond the trends to discover the ideas, initiatives, and innovations that are truly advancing beauty. Let's get started. This episode is about the 3PL service model. It's about the pick, pack, and ship of order fulfillment, about the cosmetic market insights that logistics providers see firsthand. It's about the practical and strategic functions of tertiary packaging. And it's about omnichannel retail, product returns, and consumer experience. On today's episode of the CosmoFactory podcast, I am joined by Emily Di Fante, Business Development Manager at International Logistics Group. Emily, welcome to CosmoFactory.
Diana, hi, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure, and I'm expecting a good conversation. The company you are with is a 3PL company, 3PL meaning third-party logistics. For listeners who don't work in this area of our industry, please give us a quick outline of the services that a standard 3PL partner provides.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So a standard 3PL would typically provide warehousing, inventory management, order fulfillment, retail distribution, returns management, technology integration, and value-added services. Ultimately, this allows brands to focus on growth while the 3PL handles operational complexity.
Oh, I like that operational complexity. And help us understand then your particular perspective more fully. What market tier does ILG specialize in? What region or regions does the company serve? If there are similar details that could be helpful for listeners to know.
Yeah, of course. So ILG predominantly specialize in premium and luxury brands. And where the overall experience really matters to firstly to the brand and also the customer. So ILG operates in the UK. We have 10 UK facilities. We also have a site in the EU in Poland, and we also offer global shipping to all of our customers. So we really can touch anywhere in the world.
Okay, perfect. And certainly shipping practices vary globally. I think it was about 20 years ago when Amazon introduced two-day shipping in the US, and consumers started really expecting something different in terms of product delivery. And for the past 5 years or so, we're seeing the rise of quick commerce, rapid delivery of things like fresh groceries, I think has only further normalized this type of convenience. 3PL includes convenience, but as you've already suggested, goes beyond that. I think everyone in packaging can tell you how important packaging is, not only for very practical reasons, but also for aesthetic purposes, for branding, for brand experience. I'm hoping you'll talk about how tertiary packaging, the boxes, the bags, the protective cushioning materials, how does this type of packaging do that branding or brand experience work when it shows up at the consumer store?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic. And I think that in e-commerce, the shipping box has essentially become the storefront for brands. So actually it's that first time that a customer has potentially ever touched a product, experienced a product. So it's so key that brands are getting this right. It's really interesting looking at the different brands that we have and how they manage their packaging differently. So kind of your high-end luxury to your kind of more mass market and what that typically looks like. Your high end probably using higher quality um, kind of boxes, more inserts, tissue paper, cushions, like you say, potentially ribbons, and actually your mass market going potentially just in polys. It really, really sort of changes depending on who the actual customer is.
Yeah, no, that makes good sense. And Cosmo Factory guests that I've spoken with before, and certainly listeners know that I personally love to think about words. I'm hoping you can say a bit more about really the metaphorical vocabulary of this kind of packaging. What materials or design details, you've mentioned ribbon and tissue a bit, but what details communicate luxury? What might help distinguish a legacy brand from a startup? Or is the packaging that sun care is shipped in remarkably different from what's appropriate for a color cosmetics brand? Help me think about I guess it's the signals, right, that tertiary packaging can give us. And if you have any relevant examples, please share that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, having a high quality materials and even just the thought of the presentation of the products going in to the boxes itself, how they're positioned. Are they positioned just straight in? Are those products individually wrapped, or actually do the boxes have inserts so there's no movement? It's the entire experience of actually from receiving that box, even from actually physically opening it, the way that the box opens, the sound that it creates, what that first looks like when you look inside. Is there tissue paper over with a sticker, or is it the products have just been, they're just in the box there to see? It's very, very, I think when you look at some of the brands that we have at ILG and the kind of the way that a brand differentiates itself from the market and wants to stand out in the market as well. For example, some of our customers, each product is individually wrapped in tissue paper and then is wrapped again in a box. But then actually looking at different customers who are probably have they're probably more eco-friendly, and actually they're going in sustainable packaging. So they don't have any sort of outer packaging. They're actually just placed in like a fully recyclable box.
Mhm. You mentioned the box there. Certainly, make this will let listeners know where I'm shopping, but a lot of plain brown boxes show up, I think, for consumers these days. Can you say more about sort of that aesthetic? Like, is that every brand, or what are we seeing?
I definitely don't think it's every brand. I think it very much depends on the brand's positioning within the market and actually the message that they want to give to their customer. So I think if you look at mass market, it's a lot of it's based on efficiency and it's very cost focused. And those typical brown boxes are, they're fast, they're inoffensive, they're probably fully recyclable. And actually, what the message is very different. The customers that are probably purchasing from those particular sites actually are looking at sort of speed and efficiency as opposed to actually experience. And I think if you're ordering directly from a customer's website or perhaps from social commerce, that experience that you're expecting is entirely different. And I think actually, if you're delivering off a website and paying £300 or £400 for a product, it needs to turn up and give you that experience because you may have never even walked into a boutique or never physically actually been in contact with that brand. And so, therefore, if you've spent a substantial amount of money, I think that whole unboxing experience is crucial.
Mhm. And what you're talking about there is a bit of a link, isn't it, between how consumers buy, not just sort of the market tier of the brand, but how consumers buy, the retail channel that they're shopping, and then how that might match the expectations or the experience the package that gets shipped to them gives. Do you have more comments there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very interesting to understand the type of buyer that's actually purchasing. So, for example, as somebody that's shopping on social commerce potentially might not even know what it is that they're shopping for that day, and actually they purchase something and it's arriving and it's coming very quickly and they're very excited and they just want to open it, and it's not necessarily the experience of the brand that they're buying into. It's just actually that they've seen something that perhaps there's an offer and they want it fast, or actually that the customer needs something to be delivered the next day. And actually, it's not about the experience. It's about actually having the needs to purchase and for it to arrive very, very quickly. I think they're entirely different customers. And I think that brands are absolutely aware that those customers, you can be selling, omni-channel and be sending your products in a certain type of packaging through one channel, and then actually through another channel be more aware of who that buyer is. And actually the packaging is totally different, the experience is entirely different, but it's really knowing your customer and actually where it matters and perhaps where it doesn't matter as much.
Mhm. And you've talked a bit about positioning here in your answers. I want to go back to this idea of, the semiotics of packaging, really, the vocabulary that's involved, or the signals these components suggest. Do you have maybe an example, maybe two, of various, premium brands, maybe a couple of premium brands in your portfolio that are differently positioned? So even though, right, it might be that $300 price point you've referenced, the box that shows up or the way it's packaged signals something very different about the brand. I'd like to really sort of paint a picture for our listeners here.
Yeah, of course. So one of our customers, Charlotte Tilbury, they're a long-standing customer of ILG. And the way that their products are delivered consistently is very consistent to the customer. So if a customer orders Charlotte Tilbury, ultimately they know what they're getting in that unboxing experience. If you're buying that as a gift, you know that it will turn up beautifully packaged every
Can you
time.
describe it a little bit for someone who maybe hasn't received a Charlotte Tilbury box?
Yeah, of course. So their packaging is actually quite interesting now, and this is the direction that a lot of brands are heading in, where actually the majority of the work is on the inside of the box. So the box inside is very beautiful. The product packaging is absolutely stunning as well. So as soon as you open that box, you're automatically getting that experience of Charlotte Tilbury. You know what to expect. And also the level of there's customization there as well. So with value added services, there can be engraving to the lipstick tops. It's just a very, very high level. The way that the items are packaged, each item has to be facing in the front. So as soon as you open that, you know exactly what it is you're looking at. Like even when the care of the packaging, like when it's being picked and packed, that level of detail has to be spot on every single time. Um, so yeah, I think that's a customer that's ordering from Charlotte Tilbury will know what to expect, and they get that time and time again.
Yeah. And those sorts of details you're mentioning, if a product is engraved for a particular end consumer, I don't know what they put on them, initials, names, these sorts of things, or when all the package or the products inside are facing front, that's the sort of piece that your team is physically responsible for.
Yeah, absolutely. And for each customer, it's very different. So a customer would outline what it is that their like specifications are when it comes to packing and how those products need to be packed. For example, we have another customer, Lisa Aldridge, and each item is individually wrapped in tissue paper. And that's across the board. So, and that will be something that at the point of onboarding a customer, they would outline to us what it is that they expect and what it is that we have to deliver for their customer. And it has to be consistent throughout.
And I think, it's not uncommon for a brand, say, working with a contract manufacturer to work primarily with the ingredients in that manufacturer's library, but maybe bring in a specialty ingredient, if it's particularly relevant for their brand. I'm curious, I guess, if it's the same way for these materials that we're talking about, right? If a brand comes to you with a brief about how their product should be presented and they are in love with a particular tissue, do you source that for them, or do you have a library where pull the light blue tissue off the shelf and ship it out as long as it matches the color?
Yeah, typically brands will have their own packaging suppliers. And actually what it is they will come to us and they will tell us who they're using, what they use, what they want that to look like. There are often cases where actually the packaging, for example, might not necessarily be as great as they think it is. And then we would be in a position to be able to advise them, if the seals are not sticking, for example, if the tissue paper is not actually folding in a nice way. So I think brands at the scale of kind of the brands that ILG deal with, they've spent a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money in their packaging, and they're kind
Yes.
of really aware of what works and what doesn't. But there are absolutely times where they may have had a manufacturer for many, many years, and actually all of a sudden the boxes that they thought were fantastic are no longer as great. They may have changed something. And that's ultimately our responsibility to kind of keep our customer informed that it's not doing the job that it perhaps should do.
Yeah, interesting. I love thinking about little quality details like this. And Emily, what we've discussed so far is really what I would call outgoing mail, right? It's the order fulfillment. But a 3PL team like yours handles consumer returns too, or I think you'll probably use the word reverse logistics. What are you noticing with consumer return behavior?
I think returns are really a really important part for our customer. It really enables them to build trust with their customer, essentially. Having easy, fast, effective returns can really build customer loyalty. And actually, we're seeing that brands are potentially really trying to eliminate that, return processes in refund and actually more, looking at exchange. Why isn't this right? How can we get it right? And even potentially sending out new products before we've even received the order back in. It's ultimately our job to give the brands full transparency on those returns. We need to get the stock back into inventory so they can resell it. It's also a really great opportunity for us to be able to speak to brands. And if we're receiving lots of the same product back, okay, why is this happening? What can we do? And it really then gives the brands the ability to go away and notice very, very quickly if there's an issue with products that they're potentially selling as well. And I think that's where having really, really great visibility on your stock is so important. And I think using that data is how brands are getting really smart about returns as well.
Mhm. So I have like a million questions. But, I'm assuming with a company like yours, the brand can literally see that stock data in real
Absolutely. It's
time,
real
as well
time.
as your team. Yeah, I
Yes.
spoke over you. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Yeah, it was real time. So absolutely at any point they can see where their stock is, and where it is in the warehouse, and if it's, it's been returned, or if it's out for pick, or if it's been ring fenced for potentially a B2B order. So, and that's so key for brands to have that visibility over their stock.
Mhm. No, that makes very good sense. And this is probably just my overactive curiosity, but I'm wondering too if a company like yours does any work to educate the consumer about packaging or shipping a return back. Do you care how it comes back to you? And are you making any sort of effort to teach the consumer the right way to do that? Or are we sort of past that phase with e-commerce?
I think it's very hard to educate. I think again, it very much comes down to the customer, the brands that they're purchasing, and you will notice behaviors with higher luxury end brands. The way that their items are sent back and the way that they're returned is probably a lot higher quality than like your mass market for sure. And actually, it really depends on how much that customer cares. And if you're spending a serious amount of money on a product, the chances are you really do care about that product and you want to make sure it's right. I think you're never going to eliminate the things that many 3PLs will have had returned, that things are said that they're a certain item and they're not. I think it's I think that the more that brands communicate with their customer and the more that they try and help them and try and make things more, efficient, quick, and actually that then gives, I think you can eliminate that chance of return, making your websites more friendly, giving customers the opportunity to, by using AI, actually being able to try the products on your face without even purchasing them. All of these things, I think, eventually will help to eliminate the quantity of returns, but I think you're always going to have returns. I think brands are now becoming more aware that you can really use this as a positive to really kind of build on your customer, rather than actually it just has to be a refund and that's it, you've lost that customer. You can really build brand loyalty here if it's done properly.
Yeah. Can you say more about that? A brand loyalty building opportunity? Are there maybe brands in your portfolio doing it right, or advice you're giving to many brands in hopes that you can help them leverage this as an opportunity?
I think website optimization for sure is something that lots of brands are now looking at and really trying to get under the cover of what it is that their customer really, really wants, and using the data that their 3PLs can actually give them into the reasons behind the returns. And actually, I think brands are now recognizing that it's okay to say no. You can actually refuse a return, and that's okay. Because if you are building a loyal customer who genuinely believes in your brand, then they will return if you're doing the right thing as a customer as well. And I think that customer acquisition cost, we all know, is super, super high. But actually, what customers do brands want to retain? Are they the customers that order 6, 7 items a month and return 7 out of those 8 items? Probably not, actually. So I think brands are they're recognizing that probably they have more power than they once thought they did. So yeah, I think returns is going to change massively in the future. And I think with a lot of the help of that with technology, and also with brands really understanding their customers better as well.
Mhm, mhm. And you suggested there that this is what we're looking at for the future, right? Returns are certainly changing. Do you have predictions or expectations really about the future of fulfillment more broadly that you can share?
The future of fulfillment, I think, is really going to change in a really positive direction. And actually, linking back to something you said earlier about the Amazon and the 2-day shipping, and I think the speed of shipping is massively changing as we progress into the future. But I think it's going to be a really interesting time where we're probably going to have two very different customers. We're going to have that customer that wants it today. And I think we're going to see an increase in same day, next day delivery for sure. But I also think we're going to see an increase in a more eco-conscious customer that's actually like, hang on a second, do I need this tomorrow? Or could I wait 4 or 5 days? Could we bundle all of these items together and actually Is it a necessity? And I think that's going to be a really interesting journey for brands to be a part of as well, because it's very much, who are you as a brand? Are you an eco-conscious brand that really wants to work with their customers? Or actually, are you a brand that is always going to be fast moving, fast paced? Your customer wants it today. We'll deliver today. So I think for us as a 3PL, it's very, very exciting, because ultimately we're going to be able to do the same day, next day, already do, that. But then for the eco customer, let's slow it down a little bit. Let's look at how we can be greener. Let's look at electric, final mile delivery, especially into the cities. And I do think that sort of venture out to the small towns as well. And I do see that changing. I think that the technology and automation within a 3PLs will change. And I think smarter warehousing systems will ultimately give brands more and more visibility, give them more insight into data that inevitably is so precious for them and will help them to grow and evolve. So I think there's lots of change. And I think that fulfillment ultimately is no longer moving products from A to B. It's about delivering the brand experience all the way to the customer's door. So I think there's lots of exciting things ahead.
Yeah, wonderful. And Emily, it's been really fun to hear about the world of beauty from a 3PL perspective with you today. Thank you for being my guest on the CosmoFactory podcast.
Thank you, Deanna. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening. If you find the CosmoFactory podcast useful, please take a moment to leave us a 5-star review and share your thoughts so even more cosmetic industry professionals can discover the CosmoFactory. I'm Deanna Utrusky. Please join me again next Tuesday for a new episode of the CosmoFactory podcast.